So I got this comment the other day. It said, BS, how the fuck do you progressively overload this? It's purely functional or for grannies. No use in bodybuilding. In other words, no use in building muscle. And honestly, they're not wrong, because the way most people use this, the way I used it when I first started, yeah, it is just glorified cardio. Back in my 20s, I would have backed this guy. But now, I know that they're completely wrong. Join me for a quick session while I explain. You see, I used to believe a gym was the only way to build muscle, and I developed an unhealthy psychological reliance on them because of that belief. I literally couldn't travel anywhere unless there was a gym nearby, and I couldn't be away from one for more than a day without this anxiety creeping in that I wasn't myself. But the thing that made it crazy was that I actually hated the gym, and I was a PT. I was constantly comparing myself to others. I was always trying to lift heavier than I should for my ego, and I was always getting injured. I was jumping from one diet fad to another. I'd binge, restrict, I'd chase muscle, then try and cut fat, and I'd just end up burnt out until my willpower came back, and then I'd go at it even harder, again and again, thinking I just needed to do more. You know, that whole meathead gym bro culture? Well, I was a part of it, and I honestly hated myself for it. I'd even wear those deep V t-shirts to try and show off my little chest in public. But the worst thing was, I also noticed how much clients would feel intimidated by this environment too. They'd struggle to make sessions, and they'd see the gym as a chore rather than enjoyment. Eventually, after years and years of this, I was just like, you know what, I'm done. This can't be what health and fitness is about. So in 2016, I quit the gym world. I grabbed my backpack, a suspension trainer, and I left to travel South America. And I had this determination to prove that you could build muscle without a gym. And looking back, I had no idea what I was doing, but I thought, you know what, screw it, let's see what happens. And so I used the suspension trainer everywhere. I was suspension training on beaches, building sites, boats, rooftops, literally any space. Wherever I was, I'd get it out and I'd just go after it. I had this chip on my shoulder about getting in the best shape and proving people wrong. So I was using it all the time, but it actually backfired, because early on, I still had that ego gym mentality that more is always better. And without weights to add, I thought, well, the only way forward with this was more. More reps, more sets, faster movements, longer workouts. I'd see these flashy videos of people jumping around, doing fancy moves with the suspension trainer, so I'd just copy them. But after weeks of training like an absolute lunatic trying to prove a point, I actually looked smaller. I was actually losing muscle mass, which was the last thing I wanted. I already had chicken legs, I didn't want to make them worse. So that was when I stopped and I just took a step back. You see, coming from the gym world, I thought I knew it all. I'd done my PT course, I'd lifted weights for years, I'd watched loads of fitness videos on YouTube, but the truth is, I was driven by ego. I was always just chasing heavier weights to try and look strong. But without weights to add on, I was just throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what would stick. And eventually, it forced me to admit that I didn't have all the answers. So I dropped my pride and I became a student again. And I turned to this world-class bodybuilder named Ben Pilowski. He's the founder of Muscle Intelligence. His podcast is incredible. You should check it out. And I bought all of his courses. I spent weeks studying how he executed each exercise. And eventually, I wiped out my savings for a mentorship with him because I admired his wisdom so much. And that's when I learned the single most powerful lesson in my entire fitness journey. And it sounds obvious when I say it now, but at the time it was a revelation. It was the difference between movement-centric technique and muscle-centric technique. Now, movement-centric technique is what I've been doing and what 99% of people do. You're just mindlessly moving your body from point A to point B. You're not thinking about the muscle you're actually targeting. But the body's clever. It wants to use as many muscles as possible to create that movement because a shared load is easier, right? But the problem with the shared load is that no single muscle takes enough of that load to create an effective muscle growth stimulus. It's like doing an aerobics class. It feels like work, but it builds almost no muscle. But muscle-centric technique is different. You isolate the exact muscle you want to target with slow, controlled movements, specific angles, and time under tension. One muscle, handling the majority of your body weight load, creates a powerful muscle growth stimulus. So I started applying this technique, but without weights, which is what Ben taught with, I used the suspension trainer. And I spent months practicing and refining how to target each body part with this technique, a muscle-centric suspension training technique. And I finally started to feel muscle soreness after workouts, which was an indication it was working. Plus, I wasn't wrecked all the time from trying to do those frantic HIIT-style workouts. And after months of training this way, my physique really started to change. I built great muscle definition, and in my opinion, I got in the best shape of my life. And I know that sounds cliche, but it's honestly true. And that's actually how I became known online as the TRX Traveler at first, because I documented everything until I got too much traction and TRX, the actual brand, came after me for having TRX in my name. That's a story for another video. But with this technique, even my nagging shoulder pain from years of ego lifting heavy disappeared. But something else happened, which to this day is still the biggest benefit. You see, when I used to train at a gym, I was constantly distracted by external comparisons. Like, he's lifting heavier than me, he looks way better, my physique is nowhere near that. And I'd always leave the gym deflated and frustrated because of these external distractions. But But now, training alone with just a suspension trainer, there were no distractions. It was just me and the movements. And I remember reading about this mind-muscle connection thing. Arnold, Frank Zane, these legends talk about mentally connecting with the muscle you're training. So I started doing it too. I'd close my eyes and I'd try and place my mind directly inside the muscle I was targeting. I'd visualize it stretching, contracting and squeezing as hard as I could with every rep. And I know this sounds like hippie BS, but my workouts turned into this sort of meditative training. And it made sense because meditation is one focus for an extended period, right? And the one focus was the single muscle being targeted for each exercise. So I'd finish workouts feeling like I'd been transported to another planet. Stress and anxiety just melted away. And I became addicted to that feeling and I craved workouts because of how I felt afterwards. The physical changes just became a secondary byproduct of actually feeling mentally better in myself. So after almost a year of traveling and training like this across 12 countries, I came back to London and I thought, you know what, maybe I was being too harsh. Maybe I just needed a break from the gym. Maybe I'm over exaggerating. And with this new knowledge and less of an ego, maybe I could do better. So on my 4th day back, I decided to give the gym another go. And I walked in and I remember it vividly. I felt sick. The noise, the whole atmosphere, it just made me feel trapped all over again. And I lasted about 10 minutes before I walked out. And I remember standing outside on the pavement thinking, you know what, that's it. I'm never stepping foot inside the gym again. And I haven't. And that was 2017. And then over the next 6 years, I trained using nothing but a suspension trainer with these techniques. 4 years in my small London flat and another 2 years traveling again in Central and South America with my now wife. Just me, the suspension trainer, in whatever space I could find. But fast forward to now, and I'm a dad, I've got a business, life's mental, but I train from home in my office studio with my suspension trainer hanging from the door, usually when my son's napping. And I'm in better shape now at almost 40, physically and mentally, than I ever was grinding away in a London gym. I'm not exhausted at the end of the day, I've got the energy for family, I'm present, I'm calm. And this one tool has allowed me to create that because it's sustainable and accessible. And what's been really cool is seeing the same thing happen for other people from all walks of life. They come for the muscle, that's why they usually find me. But in a few months, they mention it almost like it's a side note. They're sleeping better, mentally less irritable, they're more patient with the kids, they're feeling sharper at work. And I honestly believe it's the added bonus of training in your own space with no distractions. This meditative style training. You know, people say walking is life, but I believe muscle is life because we are 33% muscle mass. And muscle cells control such a huge amount of functions within our body for health and longevity. And when you transform your body by building muscle in a way that's sustainable, you literally transform your life. And again, I know it sounds cliche, but it is true. And that's honestly why I do this. So back to that comment, suspension trainers for grannies, no use in bodybuilding. If you're using it in the way I was when I first started, yeah, fair play, they've got a point. Just going through the motions, multiple muscles sharing the load, that probably is glorified cardio. But that's not what this is. Use it with slow, controlled, muscle-centric technique, engaging your mind-muscle connection, and it leads to a strong body, a clear head, and energy for the people that matter. And that's what I found out 10 years ago. And that's why I'm still here today. So watch this video next, and I'll show you the only 9 TRX exercises you need to build muscle across your 3 movement patterns: pushes and pulls, hinges, and squats. And how to do them with muscle-centric suspension trainer technique so you can build strong, lean muscle quickly and effectively.